is the aurora borealis, but it's called the borealis in the northern hemisphere and the australis in the southern hemisphere. And they do essentially the same things on either side of the Earth. It is vertically oriented, and with 10 meters going over through the aurora, they can go 1,400 miles on a single skip. Problem with the borealis, or those of you that have worked HF and heard signals coming over the North Pole, what do they sound like? Flutter, fluttery, echoey, really kind of weird sound, because it's a very dynamic, twisting mechanism. I lived in Alaska for 10 years, and in the wintertime we go out and see the aurora borealis, and perhaps many of you have either seen it or seen pictures of it. It's just like waves, and it flows and moves and flows and moves. Little propagations hitting the cloud, the singing clouds, and bouncing around the world. So that's why it's so weird. A lot of the Russian contacts we do come over the North Pole, and they're really affected by this. And you'll hear, first of all, you think they've got bad transmitters, and perhaps that's true, but it's really the influence of the aurora borealis that's messing their signals up. Very raspy, buzzy signal, sometimes can make transmissions very unintelligible. Another picture. Now I'm going to talk to you about the HF bands. A lot of people, you certainly learned about these when you took your tests, but perhaps you've forgotten them. But there's interesting characteristics about each of the bands, and I'm going to go through them real quick. And I think it's helpful for you to understand what bands you want to work and when you want to work them. 160-meter band is called top band. This is the most difficult band to use. It's the most challenging and difficult band to do long-distance communications around the world. And Mark was explaining last month about the DCARC award. Well, DCARC for 160 is very difficult to achieve, and it's its own standalone award. 5-band DCARC does not include 160. It's 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. The DCARC for a 160 is a standalone because it's a very difficult band to work. It's also a very noisy band. In daytime, the D layer completely absorbs 160. It's totally useless to try and communicate on it, almost always. Everything certainly is an exception. You cannot get to the F layer for propagation, and it's limited to ground wave only. So you can talk to anybody you can as long as you're going ground wave. At nighttime, the D layer goes away. Worldwide communications become available via F2 skip. In the summertime, it's a difficult band to use. Lots of static from thunderstorms around the world. I can't remember the statistic I read the other day, but it's something like there's 20,000 lightning strikes hitting the Earth every day around the world. So you get lots of static on the 160 meters. Winter evenings is typically the best time for DXing, and propagation is better during low sunspot cycles. Now this is an interesting thing to think about. For the HF people, we're always waiting for high sunspot cycles so we can get out and work DX, but it's actually worse on 160 and higher sunspot cycles. So there's advantages to having low sunspots and advantages to high sunspots, and it's important that you know the difference of when to use them. 80 meters, very similar to 160. Daytime absorption is not quite as extreme. But the high-angle signals may penetrate the ENF layer and go right on through. And daytime communications is typically limited to about 250 miles of ground wave or even skywave. Winter signals may go halfway around the world. Again, atmospheric noise is worse in the summertime. 40 meters, this is the daytime band. The D-layer absorption is not quite as severe as on the other floor bands. Short distance skip by the ENF layer is possible up to 500 miles per skip during the daytime. At nighttime, worldwide communication is available via the F2 layer. For those of you that are interested in working long distance skip on 80 and 40 meters, for example, the best time to work skip, the best time to work 40 and 80 meters for long distance is at our sunrise and at our sunset, and at their sunrise and their sunset. So you kind of need to pay attention, like if you're trying to work Egypt, for example, you want to keep an eye on when their sunset is and pay attention. They may come in. Sometimes these signals come in for 2 or 3 minutes, and then they go away. Now, if you got a big amplifier like Kent that has a big tube in it, he hears Egypt coming in. He fires his amplifier up. By the time the tubes warm up, they've gone away. Isn't that right, Ken?
I got a new solid state with it.
Oh, he solved that. He solved that problem. I'm glad you fixed that problem.
Yeah.
Atmospheric noise is less troublesome. And 40 meters is considered the band for all season. It really is. You can work 40 meters all year round. You can work it during the day, you can work it at night. It's certainly better at night, but you can use it all year round. 40 and 80, 80 and 160 meters are better in the wintertime. 30 meters works pretty much the same both day and night. It's a D-layer absorption. The D-layer absorption is really not a significant factor for 30 meters. You can do up to 1,900 miles during the daytime. And you go halfway around the world on many dark paths, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Unfortunately, for some of you, only CW and digital is allowed, and it is absolutely only 200 watts maximum. Now, the advantage of that is it levels the playing field. All the big boys down there, like Kent with his 3,000 watt 1,500 watt amplifier, he can't use legal limit. He's got to tone that thing down to 200 watts, just like all the rest of us on, or even 100 watts to help do his communication. 30 meters is one of the 3 WARC bands that came into existence back in 1979. WARC stands for the World Administrative Radio Conference, and they created 3 new bands to allow communication. And one of the criteria on a WARC band is no contesting. Some of you guys don't do contesting. You get very frustrated when you get on HF and all you hear is people calling CQ, contest, 599, thank you, and on and over and over. And they're supposed to stay in this little narrow range of frequencies, but they use the whole entire band, so it's really cluttered up, and it really frustrates non-contesters. Now, it really makes the contesters happy because they got a lot of frequency to use, but it frustrates the non-contesters. And one of the reasons they created WARC bands is so that there's no contesting allowed. So if there's a contest going on, people are on 40 meters or 20 meters, and you want to do a chat with your buddy, just move off to a work band, and you don't have to worry about running into the contest. 20 meters, this is the DXer's favorite. Worldwide on F2 for at least 2 hours per day. With high sunspots, it stays open later at night. Many times, 20 meters is open all night long. It's just terrific. And 20 meters, you can literally get around the world when it's open. Generally good throughout the day. Atmospheric noise is not an issue. And one thing to point out, you'll maybe see a trend here, is that the low bands are very noisy. As you get up to the higher bands, they get quieter and quieter and quieter. All the way up through 10 meters, which gets to be very, very quiet. So